you nailed it when you said that kindness has been weaponized because people are conflating kindness with niceness. And I will say often that I'm kind and I am not nice. And the reason being is that I don't have to be nice to somebody that's not going to be nice to me. It's a very elementary type of thinking. But kindness comes from a place of humanity. Kindness comes from a place of recognizing that while something might be completely different than yourself, that does not negate the value and the validity for somebody else.
Welcome to the Kindness Is podcast, where we take a deep dive into the true meaning of kindness. I'm your host, Kaitlin Johnstone, the co-founder of Kind Cotton. Let's dive in. So as many of you know, particularly if you're listening to a podcast called The Kindness Is Pod, I spend a lot of my time thinking about kindness, thinking about the ways in which I show up for myself, for others. And the guest I have on this week, as every single guest does, has helped me to intentionally think about the ways in which I move through this world a little more kind each and every day. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Kindness Is Pod, where I, your host, Kaitlin, have these incredibly honest, raw conversations with amazing guests who I'm very excited about my guests today. I didn't tell Portia prior to this, but I am having a slight fangirl moment right now because I've been following you for oh so long. And we're really going to dive into it today. So before we do, I just want to share with you a little bit about why this human is so incredible. Portia Burch is a Black queer activist and Omaha native with a specific focus on anti-racism work and abolition. Portia was activated by the murder of Michael Brown Jr. and the subsequent protests and riots in Ferguson, Montgomery. As consciousness shifts towards reckoning with racism and white supremacy in the world, Portia is working to create a just, equitable, and brave space in the training and development industry. She does this by curating and nurturing spaces to unlearn and decolonize behaviors that have upheld racism and white supremacy culture. Portia, I'm so happy you were here.
I'm so happy to be here. This is the first time I've heard my bio read back to me, and I'm like, that's not a bad bio at all. I like that one.
It's a really great bio. And you know, the thing is, whenever I read bios back to people, and then the follow-up question is, oh, what would you like to share more about yourself? People are like, ooh. So I consciously now leave out one or two lines because it can flow into tell us a little bit more about you.
Yeah, and I would love to do that. I actually think I like that you do that too, because things are constantly shifting and as we're doing this work. So more about me. I feel everything in a big, big way. And because of that, I care about people in a big, big way. And that has driven me to want the best for people. I want people to be their best selves. I want people to believe they can be their best selves. And that also just shifts into you can be your best self, but if we're still living in a world that is filled with oppression and filled with hate and filled with discrimination, those two don't mesh. So taking this belief that you deserve to be the best person you can be and then combining that with, if I'm my best, then I can be the best for this world and we can make a difference. That's kind of how my work began.
That's such a beautiful way of putting it. And I've talked to so many people, and I don't know that I've ever heard anyone describe it in such a fantastic way, because we live in this binary way of thinking, right? And people are so caught up in good versus bad. How can I be a quote unquote good person if I uphold white supremacy? And I think that's where we get so lost because it's more of an and conversation.
Yeah, a lot of people want to fix things from the outside in, and that just will never work because you can do all that work outside, but if you're still harboring stuff inside, if you're still grappling with your own past, what you were taught, but you're not focusing on that, it's not going to work because at some point something's going to trigger you and you're going to go right back to where you were. So you got to start with what's going on with me. Like, what do I know? What do I need to not know anymore? What do I need to shift? And when you say living in that binary, it's so true. The binary is such, I swear, is that okay? I cuss a little
Oh,
bit.
yeah.
Perfect. So binary is bullshit. And I like that. That's one of my favorite things to say is a binary is absolutely bullshit. There's no good and bad. There's no right and wrong. In most cases, there are ways that you can manipulate this thinking because of how you were brought up, right? Like what your past is, like what you were taught. You can't help what you learned as a child. And as a child, we were taught so much right and wrong, binary, left and right, black and white, and that doesn't work. So as an adult, when we start to see things in real life, when we start to experience things in real life, we see somebody next to us that is just struggling, but we were taught that they're struggling because they did this and they deserve it. As an adult, you have the opportunity to say, that's not the case. And then you get to shift some thinking. So, we're responsible for what we believe. We're responsible for what we think. We're responsible for how we act. And that starts with knowing who we are. It starts with kind of loving yourself and understanding yourself.
Yeah, for sure. And then I think we also have this tremendous opportunity to shift the thinking for future generations. As a parent, that is huge for me. My daughter is going to grow up to the best of my abilities, right? We said the
Right.
nature of the world is that in many ways we're actually doing more harm than we were in the past, and things have become super heightened when it comes to the binary way of thinking, to put it lightly. However, being a parent affords you this grand opportunity to shift her mindset and her thinking so that it doesn't have to be so quite binary. So amongst all of this relearning myself, I have the opportunity to kind of shape her thinking and her curiosity and her learning. And that's been a really beautiful thing.
Yeah, and it's so important. That's something that's been coming up a lot too with questions lately is, when should I involve my children, or when do I have these conversations with my children? And I love the fact that you're doing it with your little one, because when I just said that you can't help what you're taught as a child, if you're teaching something, if you're teaching from a place of kindness, if you're teaching from a place of love and acceptance and understanding, and even though understanding means that you might not understand something, but you understand this is a human being, that's so important. And especially when we think about kids that aren't white, we have these conversations from the minute we can speak, essentially. So inviting your child into this is creating something beautiful. That is something that's less that she's going to have to unlearn. And as she gets into this big, scary world, she's going to have this foundation of, okay, this might be what I see, but this is not what I know. And this feels better, and this makes people feel better. So what can I do to change that? And that's that inside out type of that mindset. I think that's beautiful. Kids are the future in a lot of ways. And sometimes I struggle saying that because I don't want to put so much pressure on children to try to fix this world that we have so fundamentally screwed up. But the fact of the matter is that they are, right? And if we want the future to be different, then we have to do something different now with the people that are absorbing now. There's these little sponges that are running around hearing things and seeing things. And we just need to do the best that we can to just find a foundation that lets them know that kindness goes so far. It goes so far because the root of anti-racism work and the root of decolonizing comes with kindness, because you have to humanize people. And that's something that's been so out of the norm, if for no other reason, because of white supremacy.
Yeah, there's a lot there. So I have two questions. One being, I'm assuming your answer when parents reach out to you and ask you, when do I start having these conversations, is right away, correct?
Right away.
Absolutely.
Yep. Immediately. I mean, if you're taking them to daycare, if you're taking them to the store, they're going to see somebody that looks different than them, whether it's race, whether it is gender identity, whether it is disabilities. They're going to see something that's different than who they are. Have that conversation right away. They're gonna ask questions. I mean, little kids, they say any and everything. Why does that person look like that? And that's an innocent question. But I think a lot of parents just get so embarrassed, like, oh, let's not talk about this. And they push it away. They push it away.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, the little
Other than
kid's like, I just
embracing
asked
it.
a question. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
beautiful moment when that question is asked. And you don't have to involve the other person. I think sometimes people think too, well, I don't want to go up to them and have them. You don't have to. You just don't have to. There's an example of, okay, we saw this person at the store that had
Mm-hmm.
brown skin. Let's talk about that. We saw this person at the store that was in a wheelchair. Let's talk about that. Just all these conversations that can happen and so easily.
Yeah. And I always try to follow up with too, do you have any more questions for me?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, as an educator or anyone dealing with children, a parent, anyone, ask them if they want to know more too. And
Yes.
we don't need to, as you mentioned, use people as the examples. That's what books are for. That's what information such as yours is for. That's what other tools are used for, so that when
Mm-hmm.
the time comes, they have a deeper appreciation and understanding and almost value for all humans, as opposed to othering them, right? Celebrating
Right.
as opposed to othering is something we try to work on a lot. Another thing that you had mentioned that is so interesting to me is I feel as though for centuries, right, kindness is something that has been weaponized. So when I hear you say that kindness is at the core of any type of racial justice, social justice type of work, I immediately want to know more about that.
Yes. So you nailed it when you said that kindness has been weaponized because people are conflating kindness with niceness.
Mm,
And I will say often that I'm kind and I am not nice. And the reason being is that I don't have to be nice to somebody that's not going to be nice to me. It's a very elementary type of thinking. But kindness comes from a place of humanity. Kindness comes from a place of recognizing that while something might be completely different than yourself, that does not negate the value and the validity for somebody else. Right. And so when it's been weaponized as niceness, we have people that feel like they're doing this decolonizing work. And the minute that they're activated by something, the minute that they're not coddled, they say, well, look how you're speaking to me. Look at your tone. You're going to drive away
mm,
allies. How often have you seen that in my comment section, like, or anywhere
mm,
online? And so because people feel like in order to do something for somebody else, they have to be treated well or treated in their mind what they considered well. That's where it's weaponized. So if you take away the fact that, I'm going to go back to the fact that you said with your kids or with kids that you don't have to use people, you can use books and resources. I love that because that's another way of humanizing. You're not just looking at a person as a resource or looking at a person as a
mm,
product, right? So when we're coming from a place of kindness, we recognize that people, that we're talking about human beings, not just a race, not just a sexuality, not just a disability level. We're talking about people. And when you use that and understand that people deserve humanity, people deserve love, people deserve access to resources, people deserve human rights, then that can take away that weaponizing, right? It doesn't matter if somebody speaks to you in a way that you don't feel comfortable with. You have to put yourself not so much in their shoes, but look at it from their point of view. If we use myself, I've been Black for 44 years. And
mhm,
I've dealt with being Black for 44 years. So if I talk to somebody about the frustrations that I have with people and how they treat me as a Black person, if you get upset with their frustrated tone, then that lets me know that you were looking for niceness and not kindness. And you're not seeing me so much as a person, you're seeing me as a resource to understand or to be able to say, I listened to a Black person and now I know what I'm doing. And
mhm,
that's not feasible. That's not feasible. And kindness has just been so misconstrued that it means that everybody has to have their feelings coddled and that everybody has to feel good all the time. And the fact of the matter is, sometimes you're going to feel like shit. Sometimes your mind is going to be like, this is a lot of information. That person has a lot of anger. But, and there's that but, behind that anger and the frustration, look what I learned. Look, this person trusted me to tell me what they're feeling. This person trusted me to tell me what's going on and what is needed for them to feel like they are cared for in this world. That's the actual thing that matters, not how their tone sounded, not if they smiled when they told you
mhm.
that. So I think that's kind of it. That's kindness and niceness are not the same thing. They're just not the same.
No, no, no. I often say that it's nice to hold the door open for someone, right?
Mhm.
But it's kind to disrupt systems that
Yes.
won't allow for that door to be open for all people, right? And
That
that's not
is
always
such
going to
a
come off
beautiful
as,
thing to say. I love how you said that. I love how you said that.
yeah, it's not going to come off as nice. And see, the interesting thing here too that I have to continually reflect upon, and I think it's important for all white women to recognize this. And when I say white women, I'm being very specific about it, is because the specificity. I'm gonna have to edit that. Did I say that correct?
It sounded good enough.
The specificity
There it is.
is important in naming this, because as a white woman who speaks out about things, there are often times when it's more digestible coming
Mhm.
from me. And it's more like, wow, look at her for like using her voice to talk about these things, right?
Right.
So any white woman listening to this, I want you to understand that, and I want you to understand that then when someone comes at you with information that is harmful, because it is going to happen when you are on this journey, that you do what Portia suggested and you listen and you hear their humanity as opposed to allowing your ego to get into the way. And that is like a constant thing that's going to come up, right?
Mhm.
Yes, I made a mistake. Yes, I am humble in accepting that. Yes, I need to sit with this, and yes, I need to do some big shifts and take action in changing whatever it is that caused XYZ. And I think that's where like a lot of quote unquote liberal white women back down
Yep.
and are like, I'm the good one. Again, it goes back to that binary way of thinking. Actually, the post that stands out to me more than anything that I've ever seen of yours, I want to get this correct, but I believe you were calling out particularly white women voters in Georgia. Was it Georgia?
Yep.
Potentially. And I shared this post on Instagram, and I can't tell you the amount of comments that I received in my DMs about two things. One, well, that's not me because I'm a Democratic voter. Newsflash, it is you as well. Two, and maybe we'll dive into that a little bit. Two, had Portia's tone been a little bit different in her delivery of this message, maybe I would receive it better, which you do not have to deliver anything any type of way in order for us to listen. So,
That also makes me laugh because I know my tone. Like, I think I've seen it before. I've heard it before. Yes, I remember that video. That video still kind of circulates every now and then. I like the fact that you specify white women. And I'm going to speak to white women really quick, and I'm going to make it very specific. The first thing that I want white women to recognize is the phrase white woman is okay. I know that you can say white women and it makes sense for you to say it. For me to say white women, sometimes it gets people up in their feelings. There's nothing wrong with me saying white women because that is who you are. I also speak to white women directly because you are the main source of upholding these systems of oppression. And that sounds bizarre, right? Because you also face oppression in some ways. However, it's going to come back to who are you raising, who are you marrying, who are you sleeping with, who are you benefiting from, who are you running to when things get too hard. And in a situation like in the DMs, they came running to you, somebody they felt safe with. Um, I want for white women to understand that to have the opportunity to learn from or hear from a Black woman it's an act of kindness in itself. Because at the end of the day, Black women are just tired. We're just tired. We've been doing things for so long, but we still want to see some change. And there's some of us like myself that want to help this shift happen. And so when you say that, when you hear something, you feel something, one of the things that I speak to a lot is pay attention to your body, right? So when you hear something, when you hear white women, we need you to do better. When we hear white women, you voted for Trump too. When we hear white women, being a liberal is not everything that you think that it is, you're going to feel like your body is going to get tense. You're going to get frustrated. You're going to get defensive. And my invite is when you get defensive, why are you defensive? Because I think a lot of people miss that part. And that's where the kindness goes away. That's where the expectation for niceness is. She said something that hurt my feelings. If I'm speaking in a broad way, how did it hurt your feelings? And if it hurt your feelings, why is that? So that paying attention to your body gives you a chance to slow down and understand where these big feelings are coming from. Why do I feel this way? And then you recognize I feel this way because I'm a person and my feelings got hurt. Okay, if my feelings got hurt at somebody telling me at something that's been happening to them for centuries, how do you think they feel? How do I think they feel? Why am I reacting so strongly to somebody telling me about what somebody else is going through? Have I participated in it? Have I been quiet about it? Have I just ignored it? All of these questions, but you pay attention to your body and start to recognize if it's in my gut, it's because I feel something. Your gut's screaming at you. You've participated in some way, and that is not the worst thing in the world. We have all fucked up. We've all made mistakes, and the opportunity is, or the potential is, do you want to stay in that mistake? Do you want to ignore that mistake? Or do you want to try to amend that mistake? So when your gut's screaming at you, it's generally telling you, I've done something. I've done something and I don't like hearing about this. And I don't want to think about this. I'd rather just get upset and walk away. So pay attention to your body when you hear these things. You're going to hear some really uncomfortable things. But it's only uncomfortable because it happened and it's true. And it's only uncomfortable because it's happening in a world that we allow it to keep happening. And if you want that to stop, then figure out how to participate in the right way.
And our discomfort is like a drop in the bucket.
A drop in the bucket.
You know, like that's the thing that I always tell people is you may feel uncomfortable, but what is the flip side of that? In a world
and being able
where...
to
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, being able to walk away from that discomfort is a level of privilege that I want more people to understand, because feeling uncomfortable does not feel good. You know, a stomach ache is not great. A headache is not great. Your chest hurting is not great. But to be able to walk away from that pain or walk away from that moment of discomfort is such a high privilege. And then thinking about walking away from that, and the person that took that time to be kind, to explain something to you, is still sitting there with all of that in their lap. And what often happens is if somebody makes a decision to walk away, now we have that type of stuff sitting in our lap. Okay, you told us that you were here. It got too hard and you ran away. That begins to breed some more resentment and some more just lack of wanting to be around people, lack of wanting to believe people, right? And I think that oftentimes there's this misconception that we're supposed to believe that all women are for all women. And that's one of the biggest lies, right? And I feel like it's a lofty thought process. I know right now, especially with legislation with reproductive rights and women's rights going away, it's a lot of all women have to stand together. But that means you have to listen to all the voices and not all the women. Yeah.
And the voices who've been doing this work for far longer.
It's this, you can't run into a situation of something that you don't know about and feel like you're going to fix it. I think that's another thing too. There's this layer of privilege of being white in America that everything has been handed to white people. I mean, there's been a 400-year head start. Even then, we've still come behind. Black people come behind and built this country, maintained this country. And so when we start talking about the things that are wrong or that need to be fixed, sometimes white people come running in saying, I have all of the answers. I have all the answers. There's just no way that you can have all the answers because you have not experienced what we're telling you about. And in order to get past that discomfort, you have to listen to the experiences. Like you said, listen to the people that have been in this work for years and for centuries.
Yeah. And you've been talking about it this entire episode, but I want you to be more specific about exactly two things. One, how can people support the work that you are doing? And two, what exactly is it that you are doing now that you're looking to do in the future? I mean, I'm a part of your Patreon community, so I know what you're doing on an individualistic level, but in your bio, you talk a lot about like doing things on a more grand level, on an institutionalized level. So tell us a little bit more about the specifics of the work that you were doing.
Yes. So I recently left my corporate job, which is fantastic and also like,
Yes.
So for a grandiose thing, I do consulting with different organizations and different companies to recognize biases in the organizations or the staff. And so there's a big need for that, especially in nonprofits. Nonprofits feel like they're coming from the best place, and oftentimes they have the most work to do. It's a lot of savior complex in nonprofits. I also do some facilitating with some teachers that kind of focuses around anti-racism, but also boundary work. And then my podcast and just my content creating is just kind of getting that out there. My Patreon, thank you for being a part of it. My Patreon, I do that very carefully. I don't want to put things behind a paywall because that does not help anything. And I know that it's not always accessible, but it is a way to invest in what I'm doing. It is a way to invest for me to be able to start taking this like on the road, doing TED Talks. I would love to do more TED Talks. I would love to do a TED Talk. I would love to be able to go to different universities, but it allows me the time to find the resources that I need, take the time that I need to build my platform more, to build out more curriculum, to be able to edit the curriculum as things happen. Because I like to keep things current with what's happening in the world. Like I don't necessarily speak to Black history because that's back there. We know what's back there. I speak to the today. So the best way to support me is, if you see me on platforms, follow me there. If you're able to join my Patreon to invest in that, and just kind of, this is another piece. This is actually it. Spread the word of what you learn from me. Don't gatekeep what you get from my content, whether it's sharing a video to a friend, whether it's talking to a friend. This is what I heard from Portia, and this is what she said, and this is what I got from it, and this is what I think we can do from this. I like to speak in very broad ways with a specific topic because I don't want somebody to copy paste what I said. I want you to take what you've heard from me and then relay it in a way that makes sense to you and your peers around you. So share what you're learning. Talk about it with your people. Shake the table, right? Just don't keep things comfortable around you. It doesn't do anything. I don't want to say it doesn't do anything. It doesn't have the impact if you sit and you're like, I'm doing all this work and I feel like I'm decolonizing and I have unlearned so much, but I'm not telling anybody about it. That's not an act of kindness. That's still an act of selfishness, because what's going to happen is somebody's going to hold that above somebody else. Well, you have messed up because you did X, Y, and Z. Imagine if you just taught them that, right? Or shared that with them. So a lot of pay it forward is also a way to support what I do. I feel I'm still learning about how to acknowledge my worth and what I do. And that's my own thing. Thanks, therapy. But thanks. I mean, financially, we live in a capitalistic world. We can't get away from that. So financial support is always going to help. It's always going to help me. But my biggest goal is decolonizing and dismantling systems of oppression, which means that this community that has been built, that I'm so happy that you're part of, needs to keep growing. And it grows by sharing what you learned from me, sharing what you've understood from me, sharing what has shaken up in your brain. I've had so many people come and say, I have looked at things so differently. And that to me is a sign of success. That to me that's what I want. I want people to get it. And then I want people to share it. Right. So that's probably the best way.
Yeah, that's huge. I also think that we live in a time in which everyone feels entitled to information because of social media.
Yes.
And it's, since you are a content creator, since you are a Black woman content creator, I think it's really important for white women, again, particularly, to pay for what they are learning, right? To also not demand information. There's a difference between what you were saying about being a part of the community and journaling and sharing and really being involved. But anytime I specifically share anything from any marginalized community, I preface it with, do not slide into their DMs demanding information from them.
Yes.
Because we white people, we white, straight, cis white people feel as though we're entitled, right? Like, teach me the ways without compensation. So I just want to put that out there because Portia so beautifully explained all of the ways in which you can support her without mentioning that little piece of it.
That little piece. The best analogy that I've given to people when it comes to investing in this, because it's an investment and it's a lifestyle change. Once you see things, I feel like you can attest to this. Once you start this work, you start to see things in a way that you cannot unsee them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's an investment in changing your lifestyle, and it's no different than investing in insurance for your car. It's no different than investing in a class that you might take online. It's no different than investing in getting your teeth cleaned. It's something that's part of your lifestyle. And one of the fun things about Patreon is that you can adjust it. You know, if life gets weird and you decide I'm going to give $10 a month and life gets weird and you drop it down to $1, fantastic. If you have to leave and come back, that's okay. But to your point, to expect something from me, because this happens far too often. I get DMs, I get emails asking for information, saying they want more, but without any mention of compensation. Because one of the things I'm not going to do, I'm not going to beg anybody for anything. I'm not going to ask anybody for anything. I want people to recognize this is what you should be done. But I will quickly also say, do not come to me and do not expect something of me when I give so much already. It's what you were taught. It is something that needs to be unlearned. And that's one of the first lessons you can learn. You don't deserve anything for free. Like, you being here does not mean that you have whatever you want. And you had said earlier too about letting go of your ego. That's one of the first things I talked about on my podcast, is like, you have to let go of your ego. You are not the center of attention right now. And it's okay. It is okay not to be the center of attention.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. we all need to hear that over and over and over again, because in many other ways you're going to be, like you've been forever. So it's like this massive paradigm shift. However, it is a crucial one. So I appreciate you mentioning that. Before we wrap up, and we've talked about this pretty much this entire episode, but I want to know, kind of word for word, if you could envision a world that is truly more kind, what would it look like?
It would involve a lot more listening. It would involve a lot more curiosity. You kind of tapped into that with your kids. Ask questions, remove assumptions. Because of bias and because of just discrimination as a whole, there's a lot of assumptions about people just based off of what you see. So an act of kindness is to not have an assumption of a person that you recognize based off of something that you read or saw something else or somewhere else. Ask questions. An act of kindness is to truly care about the people around you. And an act of kindness is to stop shit when you see it. Kindness is really not about you personally. It is about what you give to somebody else. So if you see something, say something. You see something, stop something. But honestly, being curious, being caring, and being open. Those are the three things that best: curious, caring, open. Ask some questions, care about people when you see something happen, and be open to information. Be open to knowledge. Be open to learning. Be open to understanding what somebody is sharing with you when they want to be seen as a human, which is something you should do anyway. But when they take that opportunity to share with you, it's a beautiful opportunity.
Yes, I love that. The openness piece of it. It's so crucial, especially if that openness is a change. Like a change within you from your standard way of thinking. Being open to that is really a beautiful thing.
Yes, let go of the individualism and understand that individuality is what makes this world okay, but we have to honor that individuality. But that does not mean that you have to ignore the individuals around you. Embrace individuality. You and I are vastly different, but we're able to have a conversation, able to be in community together because we recognize that we're individuals and we can care about individuals. That individualism is so centering and so like, it's just me. So yeah, I think it helps.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for
having me.
It was awesome. So shortly after Portia and I sat down to film this podcast episode, I saw one of her videos on TikTok, and she really got into the difference between kindness and niceness. And what I took away most from that is that if someone is willing to share their shared experiences with you, and you shut down and you turn away, how are we supposed to move on from there as a society? How are we supposed to cultivate a world in which we are creating a more inclusive, kind future? When BIPOC women particularly are open to sharing their experiences with you, their lived experiences with you, and white women cry or shut down or walk away, we are doing nothing other than perpetuating racism, and we are reinforcing Black and brown women to not trust us. And if what we all want is to create change, what we all want is a more healed and liberated future, then we need to really start listening and responding in a way in which is truly kind. Thank you all so much for listening to this episode of the Kindness Is podcast. If you love it and it's adding even a little bit of value to your life, we would love, love, love if you could subscribe, rate, and review so we can reach even more people and make this world a little bit more kind.